Nice. This is a fun little thing. So Todd, why don't you even tell her why we're doing this in the first place?
Oh, so the other night when I decided to, I had Underwater queued up for probably 2 weeks, and I just never got a chance to sit down and actually watch it. And then one night, I was sitting here in my room that I built, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna watch this movie in my room with my speakers loud and just enjoy it. And I watched it, and I enjoyed the shit out of it. And then it was over, and I was about to turn my system off and go inside, and I don't know why, but I just kind of clicked over to, I think it was Hulu, and uh, right there, I did one scroll. I just did a on my mouse wheel or whatever it is, and I saw Sunshine right there. And my brother-in-law the day before had asked me if I had heard of Sunshine. I was like, "Are you kidding me? Yeah, it's like one of the best space movies ever. So good." And he's like, "Yeah, it's so underrated, right?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, it really is." And so it was on my mind, and so I decided instead of going inside, I would just do a double feature, and I started that movie. But I wasn't going to watch the whole thing, actually. I was just going to watch the beginning because I forgot how it started.
Just wet your whistle.
And just wet my whistle a little bit. And that turned into staying up real late doing the double feature. And man, I just got to suggest the next time you want a double feature to do Underwater and Sunshine in either order. I don't know how much it matters. I liked doing Underwater first because you go from, you know, as far down as you can go to as far up as you can go, basically. And that was really, and after Underwater, I kind of needed to be up,
Yeah.
right?
More space.
Right, because in Underwater, you're always there. You're never, even at the end, you're never not there. But at the end of Sunshine, you end up on Earth. So it's like this whole journey of like being underwater, you can't get anywhere, and then you're in space and you're nowhere else but space, but then you end up on the Earth and everything is okay at the end. So it was incredible and so fulfilling at the end. I mean, I highly recommend it.
That's a really great point, because I was debating like what is the optimal order of viewing, because if you start with Sunshine, then the film ends with the destruction of their vessel, which kind of plays into the implosion and degradation of the Roebuck. But if you start with Underwater, then it first ends with explosion and wanting to, light up the dark, which kind of plays into the mission of Sunshine, reigniting the sun. But I think you told the far better reason. Like, it's so much better to be cramped and be, claustrophobic, and then kind of go through this whole journey of saving humanity once again. And yeah, you do get to end on Earth, and everything's okay. Like the lights out, the sun is working. Dude, well done.
I recommend it. I definitely recommend it. It was very fulfilling, for sure.
What did you pull anything else out of that experience? Like either contrasting or just kind of the journey of hanging out with those two different styles that are both anamorphic. They both kind of they feel familial in a lot of ways.
I mean, I'm 100% sold that we are correct in that in films like this there has to be a cost to things.
Yeah.
And like everything has to cost something dire, because you're in extreme. You're in extreme environment. Two, you're in an extreme situation, and so in reality, the mission would probably fail in reality. But we're in a movie, right? And so that would be a very short movie. So we always explore the option of what if it didn't immediately fail, and that's fine. But there will be, no matter what, there will be a cost to it, and I love that. Also, I'm 100% certain now that less exposition is better. And yes, like we talked on our previous episode, Notting Hill, about exposition as a game, or exposition in some fun way, can be beneficial for sure. Absolutely. I'm not saying that it shouldn't exist. I'm saying that you better have a damn good reason for telling me all of this, and using my time, my hour and a half or 2 hours, to tell me something, when either it can be told through a more unique way, or it doesn't have to be told at all. I love that both of these movies had almost zero exposition, and when it did have it, it was done in such a light way that I didn't even notice that it was happening. Both of the films felt like that to me, and so they were very similar in that regard, and and then you always had, you had a monster for both of them. In one case it was an actual monster, in another case it was a human monster, but it was, this shit got harder. As you were talking about earlier, it kept getting harder and harder and harder, and everything. Things kept going wrong, and one thing snowballed into something else that was worse, and in both in just amazing ways. So yeah, I'm very convinced of those two things just from these movies, and I'm sure that if I wanted to, I could probably list some more, but those were the big ones.
Those were.
Did
great.
You watch this? Did you do this?
Yeah.
Did you?
I spent
do
my
the
day
double
that
feature?
way. Yeah. I was trying to time it so that it would still be relatively fresh, and so I back-to-backed it a few hours ago.
Which one did you do first?
I started with Underwater. I was like, I'm going to do it the same way Todd did it. And
sweet.
Play right through. And yeah, it was great. And I mean, I really like your point about, just both of them are very light-handed with the exposition. Going back to something you said in the Underwater episode, about how, she brings up the fact that he has a daughter. But she does it in a way that you're absolutely right. I didn't even think of it as exposition when it happened, because it's out of her confusion of, what are you doing here? You have a daughter, you have responsibilities. You should have saved yourself by now. And that's total exposition. But it builds onto something else. It's not wasteful either. Just beautiful. And both of them do that. Like, we don't know anything about Cassie, in Sunshine. We don't know her backstory. We don't know who's waiting for Searle, or Mace. Like, we don't know what any of them are going through back home, and what their lives are, because it's not pertinent to the film. Instead, we only know about Kappa, and his family back home. And the only reason we even know that, I mean, it's not wasted, but it's kind of introduced as a bit of a foil to create hostility and tension between Kappa and Mace. And so just by him standing in the message room and sending his message, cost Mace his ability, to send out a message to his family, which creates tension that lasts throughout the entire film, and is used in a lot of great ways. So the fact that Kappa has family is a method of creating tension that, reveals character in a number of ways. For one, not just to get them in conflict, but it introduces the Lightroom, and all the things that the Lightroom is capable of. It introduces the sheer determination that Mace has on his mission, because Mace hates Kappa deeply, so much that he volunteered him. I don't think that's how volunteering works, by the way, but he volunteered him to go outside and to risk his life. He's like, yeah, I'm volunteering Kappa. And it's all important, because whenever it really came down to it, it showed how much Mace really did care about the mission whenever he volunteered himself to die, potentially. He gave Kappa the suit that could have let him live. And so it was a really great way to reveal the real true character of Kappa, or of Mace, and that, of course, is set up just by the fact of using the exposition that Mace has family. He has a sister and nephews. And of course that eventually becomes still relevant to the very, final scene whenever we reveal his sister and nephews outside in the snow in Australia, trying to survive. And they do get to survive because of Kappa. So that's our only tether back to Earth and back to reality. And so none of it's wasteful. You're so absolutely right that it's very lean, and not just exposition, but using the whole, whatever you call it, the whole buffalo. Nothing goes to waste. And that's genius. Some of the other things, that kind of popped out at me, so just thinking about crew, because these are very crude. There's a lot of things that these two movies have in common, right? They're very isolated, very tight crews, very small casts. And there's a lot of like spacesuits and underwater suits. And so those things functionally play a part in the films. And so there's a lot of visual brotherhood between the two films. But with the crew themselves, there's two interesting differences, interesting to me, I guess. In Underwater, there's kind of a slow accrual, and revealing the crew kind of one by one. You introduce them one at a time, and we got to get to know them individually pretty slowly, or at least not all at once. And there's also no interpersonal conflicts within the crew themselves, at no point. And to the point where it was actually a joke. Like there's that moment in Underwater where Paul looks at Emily and says, someone's got to go out there and save us. Okay, Emily, this is your time. And it's like,
yeah,
he's like,
so good.
Just kidding. I'll do it myself. That's how much they're kind of out for each other, to look out for one another. There's never any man versus man element to this, as opposed to in Sunshine, the crew, we have immediate introductions. We're kind of just thrown into their social dynamics, and we got to, pick up on the energy between each other on our own. And that kind of gives way to more interpersonal conflict, right? Like I was saying, Kappa versus Mace is a big one. But then eventually even the villain itself becomes kind of a man versus man, which, if you go back and listen to the Sunshine episode again, is ultimately representative of a man versus God story that they're telling. As opposed to the villain in Underwater is a very much man versus nature that's embodied in this kind of man versus monster spirit. So the villains also have some contrast that I really like. And the locations and the vessels are pretty cool. Like Sunshine, we get this very strong view of the layout, and it's beautiful and comfortable before it's ultimately stripped away to reveal the horror of living without light, which is emblematic of the film itself, right? The movie is kind of giving you this idea of the sun itself is dying. And so they strip us of light within the movie after we got so comfortable knowing everything, which I think Joe left a really nice comment. I haven't read it since it came out, but I think he left a really nice comment on the Sunshine episode discussing that aspect. And Underwater, same thing. Or complete opposite thing. I mean, not the same thing at all. But we never get to know the location. We're always in the dark and fighting our way through. And of course, there might be some practical stuff to that. I think it might let them hide reusing props and sets so that we never really feel like cheated out of a thing. Instead, because we never really see where we're at, everything feels new and scary all the time. And so there's never a breath. And so these are two totally different approaches to horror, because horror kind of starts out as a science fiction film that, devolves into a horror film. Whereas Underwater starts as kind of a catastrophe film that evolves into a horror film. And in those ways, there's some similarity too. Like they don't end up being what they start out as. And so there's some beautiful stuff there. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what, hit me over the head, for sure. I think all the performances are really great. Like everyone's in all of these films plays a really great role. And to your point, earlier, there's a lot of sacrifice that just hits, perfectly. In Sunshine, there's a really great, essence of him sacrificing himself, and we have that beautiful moment similar to what we have in Underwater with Nora sacrificing herself. But I will say the difference between William Eubank and Danny Boyle is still massive. Danny Boyle, I think, is basically great at everything. I think his action sequences are really, really good, but I think what makes them so good is his ability to have these emotional punchlines and these through lines. Because the emotional punch on Sunshine is so much greater, and part of that has to do with his, ability to choose music and to kind of, but also to kind of stretch the emotional moment out. Like I think about the moment where I'm gonna forget her name. I don't have it in front of me, but the botanist who's overseeing the plants, like the moment she dies is this really beautiful moment of, we're giving you hope and then we're stripping it away. And Sunshine does that constantly. He's constantly giving you hope and stripping it away. They strip out the fence, what's that thing called? Not the payload itself, but the shield, right? And suddenly that's damaged. And then they get out there and they have that moment. Guys, it's fine. We're going to be able to, we'll fix it. It's fine. Oh, relief, right? We sigh. And then boom, another accident. Like you said, everything starts snowballing. And then now, oh God, now we're not going to live to get back home. Now it's just about completing the mission. And then she finds this little tiny plant, and it's like, oh, well, maybe not. Or actually they go into Icarus I and they have all this vegetation. It's like, oh, we might make it after all. And then of course explosion, and nope, strip that away. And then she gets in there, the botanist, into her burned down laboratory and finds this little plant. And it's like, oh, well, maybe. Nope, she's killed. And so they're just one after another, just kind of punching you. Which is just putting your emotions through so much more. Whereas Underwater, I think, is just constantly stressing you out. Like, I don't know how much I ever really got hope. There's moments, but I don't know that ever really gets stripped. It's more just watching people die that you don't want to die.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with the premise too. So like the premise with Underwater is they're just drilling, right? It's like,
true.
Yeah. They're not on a mission to save anything. But in Sunshine, they're trying to save humanity. So the stakes are a lot higher than just a group of people dying. In fact, I think they've probably all reconciled with the notion that they wouldn't survive anyway. I mean, they all are prepared, that especially Mace, but they're all prepared for this to be a suicide mission, if necessary.
Yeah.
Right. And the goal is for it not to be, obviously. But so I think that a lot of that, yes, you're totally right, and that's true, but a lot of that has to do with the actual story itself.
Good point. Right. Really, really good point. As far as, but I will say, like, with Danny Boyle, every time I'm watching his films, he knows where the emotions are in the film, and he will give them breath, and he'll build into them and let them breathe afterwards. William Eubank hasn't quite, like, we went and watched the screening of The Signal, right? The Lawrence Fishburne movie. And there was the action sequences were always great, but there was never any emotional, resonance or, punch, at all. And even I felt the same thing with his first film, just called Love. It's another sci-fi space film. And it's beautiful. It's a gorgeous movie, especially given the budget of like nothing. He built a bunch of stuff in his mom's front yard and made a movie. Like that's
awesome.
It's absolutely,
that's so awesome.
Yeah. And that was heavily inspirational for me as a filmmaker. And so I think what I really like, because he's such a strong visual director, William Eubank, I love him working on other people's scripts, because I'm pretty sure he wrote those other two films, The Signal and Love, and we won't get into those obviously, but him directing someone else's ideas, badass. Like, I am so excited about him again, all over again, because after Love came out, I was like, man, I want to see what he can do with the budget. Then he got a budget, and I was like, okay, not what I was really hoping for. But now that he's made this, I'm like, oh, he just needs someone writing for him, because I'm sure he's coming up, behind them and fleshing moments out and, figuring out the beats that, he's good at. But so I'm really excited about him all over again. And I'm excited to see him still, directing other people's scripts because he's got a lot of talent for sure.
Definitely. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Good call, man. Doubleheader, Sunshine.
It was an accident, pure accident. But it was a happy accident. I never have time to do 2 movies in a row. So, I'm glad it was those 2.
Me either. I totally
don't
watch
you either.
Back to back.
Yeah, maybe every day.
Maybe every day.
Jeez.
Nice. Well done, man. I really enjoyed this. If y'all like this, let us know. We could maybe do some other things. I've been trying to figure out ways to make things fun for, the patronites, as I, poorly call them. Patrons feels too low.
Patrons.
It feels like
patronites. I like that. I like it a lot. If you guys, if there's something you guys want, let us know. We'll see what we can do. I don't know, little video tours of where we are, or just like more discussions of maybe one actress or actor, or maybe methods, like some methods, some acting methods or whatever.
And tons about music. We could talk about what it's like
about
to
music.
score.
Oh shit! Don't get me started on that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah,
we can do that anytime.
For sure. Nice.
So,
okay.
Awesome.
Well, signing off, fellas.
All right.
And ladies.
See ya.
Cutting.